Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukhaṁ karoti vachalam pangum lankayate girim Jatkripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataram. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Pancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So we will continue our examination. Actually, we will conclude our examination of the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Anybody remember which chapter? You're cheating, because I told you. It's chapter 11. 2 months later? No, a little less than that. It's been a while, isn't it?
It's been a long time.
Since before I left
For Kansas.
for the Midwest, yeah. And we've got 3 verses left in chapter 11, and then we can move on to very confidential. Well, and you'll see. I don't want to give it up. Give it away. So we're looking at texts 47, 48, and 49, which conclude chapter 11 of the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. So we're getting pretty thickly into Uddhava Gita. So Krishna says, Ishtapurtena mamevam yo yajeta samahitaha lavate mai sadbhaktim matsmriti sadhu sevaya. One who worships me in full concentration by performing sacrifices and activities meant for the welfare of others attains unflinching devotional service to me. By rendering service to saintly persons, he achieves realized knowledge of me. Text 48, he says, Prayena bhakti yogena satsangena vinodhava nopayo vidyate samyak prayanam hi satamaham. O Uddhava, I am the supreme shelter and goal of life of the devotees. If one does not engage in my devotional service, which is received by the association of my pure devotees, there will be no means of his escaping material existence. 49, he says, Aitat paramam guhyam shrinvato yadunandana sugopyam api vakshami tvam me bhritya suhritsakha. O Uddhava, O beloved descendant of the Yadu dynasty, because you are my servant, well-wisher, and my friend, I shall now reveal to you the most confidential knowledge. Please hear these confidential topics from me. So these verses bring up a couple of things worth noting. So in the first one, in 47, Krishna says, he talks about rendering service to the sadhus. He says, Matsmriti sadhu sevaya. That they get knowledge of me by serving the sadhus. But I'll come back to that, because he also says, he says, one who worships me in full concentration by performing sacrifices and activities meant for the welfare of others attains devotional service to me. This is a really important thing. I was just in the process of putting this part of my presentation together when I got interrupted. But there's a verse in the 10th canto where Krishna Krishna and the cowherd boys are on their way to. They are so far out in the forest, so far away from Vrindavan, that it doesn't make sense to go home for lunch or to have lunch sent out to them. This is Krishna's plan. So they end up going to Mathura. Krishna gets this idea. Well, look, we're closer to Mathura than we are to home. So, and I know these Brahmins are doing this big fancy sacrifice, so there's going to be all kinds of good stuff there. So tell you what, you go ask them in the name of Krishna and Balaram. Tell them, Krishna and Balaram and their friends are out in the forest and it's lunchtime. They've been playing all day. They are hungry. And the Brahmins, of course, we know that. Brahmins poo-poo them, shoot them away. Grubby little cowherd boys with your bare feet with dust and cow poop all over them. Get away, we're doing a big old fancy sacrifice with gold utensils and, guys with fancy colored clothes on and, all kinds of mantras and swahas with the visargas punctuating the end of every line. And, don't bother us. We're doing important stuff here. So the boys go back to Krishna and Balaram and they say, well, go to their wives. So we know that part. But before that, here they're out in the forest. This is in the chapter just after the stealing of the gopis' clothes, which happens in the winter, but this is in the forest because the verses describe how in the heat of forest, in the heat of summer, Krishna and Balaram are and their friends they're being shaded by all the trees of Vrindavan. And Krishna's names 10 friends. And in doing so suggests that I'm about to say something that needs to be broadcast in all 10 directions. Everybody needs to know this. And he says, just see these trees of Vrindavan. They're so munificent that they give their everything for everybody. They just, everything we need comes from the trees, wood and bark and flowers and fruit and leaves and everything comes from the trees. And they live simply to give to others. They don't have any other business except giving. We have this even in our culture, right? Shel Silverstein. Mm-hmm. I'm about to choke up just thinking about it. Have you never seen The Giving Tree? Oh, Sumati, I'm going to make you cry. Shel Silverstein, who we know as a cartoonist from the 50s and early 60s as a cartoonist for Playboy.
Oh.
Or I know. I guess Sumati was never a 16-year-old boy, so she wasn't part of Hefner's target audience. But yeah, he became a children's author, and he wrote this wonderful book called The Giving Tree, and I can't tell you about it. You have to discover it. So Krishna is telling his friends, everybody needs to understand this, how munificent these trees of Vrindavan are. They're just like a king who just gives everything, like great personalities who just give everything. And then he cites a verse, Etavaj Sapalayam. Oh, shucks. This is a verse I know. But he said the gist is, he says, pranay artay dhiya vacha, that we should serve everything that we have. We should serve others with whatever we have. Pranay, artay, dhiya, and vacha. Following these trees. Our life. Prabhupada explained this once. There was a morning walk in maybe Detroit or someplace like that. And somebody asked, young young devotee apparently just got married. He said, I want to know how to, I'm a householder. I want to know how I can serve. So Prabhupada said, I guess he looked at Jagadish or somebody. He said, you're the GBC, you tell him. So he said, well, I think so-and-so is having some programs for preaching that, Prabhupada said, no. He says, pranay arthai dhiyavacha. You can serve by giving your life, prana, giving your entire life, your life air, your breath. But if you can't do that, then arthai, then your wealth. If you don't have any money, dhiya, use your intelligence to write some books about Krishna. And he says, if you don't have any intelligence for writing books, then vacha, your speech. Just tell everybody what you understand about Krishna, everyone you encounter, but the gist of this is this living for the welfare of others. Etava janmasapalyam. Anyway, that's the essence of the verse. And this is, this should be the life of the devotee, to the extent that we're capable. This is certainly the life of the sannyasi. This is our determination that we will cross over the ocean of material existence. I remind myself of this every morning when I wake up. I will. Prabhupada explains that this verse from the Brahmana of Avanti later in the 11th canto, that he says, I will cross over. He says, actually Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains the same thing, says the same thing as where Prabhupada got it, that I will cross over the ocean of material existence by dedicating myself to the service of Mukunda. And how do we get the service of Mukunda? We get it by serving the welfare of others, by engaging in welfare work for the benefit of others. The devotee is Paradukhi Kripambudhi. It's the notion of mercy, whose only suffering is seeing the suffering of others. So they do whatever they can to relieve. So the sannyasi's commitment is to live completely. We engage kaya, mana, and bhakti. 3 things in the service of Mukunda. Our body, our mind, and our speech. That's symbolized by the Tridanda, and we add a 4th rod, a 4th reed to the staff, symbolizing our very self. Simply living for the welfare of others. That's the point of accepting sannyasa. I'm not a part of this small social circle anymore. I'm not responsible for them. I'm dead. And my business is serving everybody else. The whole world is my family. One of the things that we accept on accepting sannyasa is achyutagotra. Our family is Krishna's family. Krishna's family is my family. So, I think that's an important point that we shouldn't miss. And we'll come back to the sadhu sevaya, because that's also discussed in the other verses. Krishna says it more pointedly, I think, in verse 48. But I want to take just a moment to read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary for this verse. It's short. It's two sentences. But there's a lot there. He says, an advanced devotee performs the service meticulously because it is his very life and soul. His austerities are never artificial because he keeps his body healthy so that he can properly execute his service to his spiritual master and the Supreme Lord. That's a big one. We don't engage in artificial austerities. Prabhupada said sometime, he talked about the austerities of Raghunath Das Goswami, that he would live by just a palmful of buttermilk, maybe every day, every couple of days or something like that. He completely, he didn't have time for sleeping. He didn't have time for eating. And every once in a while he would take a little buttermilk. Sometimes Prabhupada says butter, but I think the Chaitanya Charitamrita says it's buttermilk, which, well, that's what's, the butter's not, right? The butter's gone. So it's left behind when you take the butter. But now it's nutritious, but it's, you know, it wasn't much. But then he cautioned us. He says, you can't imitate. He says, if by fasting your service becomes hampered, he says, you can't do it. So, you know, we see that, you know, the instructions about fasting, as strict and severe as they seem, there also seems to be some flexibility. And we know the story of the sannyasi who met Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and he was it was Ekadashi day, and he was fasting completely, even from water, and he was leaping in the kirtan. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj was amazed, and so he told them, he says, I don't understand. You're leaping in the kirtan, but you're fasting even from water. And he said, well, that is my determination. And he said, you should take some prasadam. No, I fast, you know. And he says, well, there's fasting, and then there's the instruction of the sadhu. And so the devotee took some he took some Ekadashi prasadam, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj was pleased. He said he understood his instruction. He gave the instruction a little obliquely. But the scriptures say that we don't break our fast. If our intention is to fast, we don't break our fast by taking water, by taking milk, by taking fruit, something else, and by taking the instruction of the spiritual master. These things don't break our fast. So if the instruction of our spiritual master is Prabhupada sometimes told the book distribution parties, well, if you can't go out and sell books because you're weak from fasting on Ekadashi, you have to eat. Just that simple. We have our priorities. So that's a really thing. But also, he makes the point, that we need to keep our bodies healthy. This is something that's been particularly on my mind, I think, progressively the last number of months. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing. And then the next one, he says, I'm the supreme shelter and goal of life of the devotees. He said, if one doesn't engage in devotional service, which is received by the association of my pure devotees, there's no means for escaping this material existence. There really isn't an ultimate solution to the problems of life without accepting bhakti, because everything else falls short. Even liberation, the Bhagavatam says that that you're not properly situated. It's a situation that's contrary to the soul's nature. So it's not, it's just not. It doesn't work. It's just kind of a zero situation. It's pretty much like the shunyavad of the Buddhists. And if you're living, if you're drowning in an ocean of misery, floating on the surface is cool. If you're drowning in an ocean of debt, being debt-free, having nothing in the bank, but also having no debts, feels like a great relief. I've known devotees who worked hard as they approach retirement age to make sure that there was a devotee in Alaska with all the bamboo on his lots. I can't remember his name. Nice guy. I remember when we first got there, they had just become debt free, and they couldn't have been happy. It's like they were liberated, because whatever money comes in, it's yours. It's not somebody else's. But if we get into debt, and getting out of debt takes some work. And when you reach that zero balance, that seems like a great accomplishment. What would you do with it? So actually having something in the bank is even better, and bhakti is more like that. But then how do we get bhakti? Krishna tells Uddhava here, there's only one way to get bhakti, and that's by association with devotees. That's from the word bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya. Bhagavatam says. Bhakti comes from bhakti. Sadhana bhakti comes from the heart of a bhakta. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains this early in Madhurya Kadambini, when he's very beginning, when he's talking about bhakti and how bhakti is every bit as independent as Krishna. Goes where she wants, but here's how she does it. She follows the lead of devotion. She resides in the hearts of those devotees, those Madhyama Bhaktas, who share Krishna consciousness with others, who share their bhakti with others. And whenever they're kindly disposed towards someone, she says, oh, my body, the Lord's bhakta likes him. Okay, so that's where I'm going. So she enters that bhakta's heart, that person's heart, and turns that person into a bhakta. That's how it happens. That's where bhakti comes from. That's also an important thing to understand. Bhakti comes from bhakti. So we get sadhana bhakti from the association of devotees. And that sadhana bhakti yields bhava bhakti, and bhava bhakti yields prema bhakti. So bhakti comes from bhakti. This is explained, it's explained in the Bhagavatam, it's explained in a little detail too, as well in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and Vishwanath and Jiva Goswami's commentaries. That, this is where, what this means is bhava bhakti doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from sadhana bhakti, and prema bhakti doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from bhava bhakti. It's bhava bhakti matured, fully matured. And where does sadhana bhakti come from? It comes from the bhakta. We get it from the devotee. So the fact is, we just not only we don't have spiritual life without the association of devotees, and particularly without the service of devotees. I was engaged in some discussion in a group of God brothers and God sisters on Facebook, and this devotee posed some questions that I found strange, and I don't know, just really strange, like trying to trap somebody or something. And so I just expressed, as I have occasionally over the time I've been in this group, that maybe this group isn't for me if this is the kind of discussion we're going to have. And one of my friends, a good friend of mine, said, please don't forsake your siblings. I don't know what you mean by forsake. I had a life before there was Facebook, and I was happy to associate with devotees and do whatever service I could for them and whatever service I could with them. And whether or not I'm part of this group on Facebook or that group, or even on Facebook at all, I'm still happy to associate with whatever devotees and serve with and serve any devotees who find it favorable. Bhakti doesn't come from Facebook.
It sounds like that person wanted you to stay in the group because that person was getting something from like don't forsake me.
She knows where to find me. And she's not shy. Anybody who knows her knows that. Which is why she was, so bold as to, call me out like that. I'm like her little brother. That's our real life, associating with devotees and doing whatever service we can for the devotees, helping devotees, according to our situation, according to the nature of our relationships. Some devotees, we have a relationship with them that makes it appropriate for us to give them some instruction when it's necessary. Others not. And so if we see, if there's some problem, we don't have that kind of relationship with someone, then our service is to maybe find someone who they can hear from, and see if they'll say something. Otherwise, it's just simply, it's simply, it's not our business. So, and it becomes, and it just becomes awkward. Awkward, sometimes just a little ugly. If we, find says, well, no, you don't understand. I'm a senior devotee, blah, 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 blah. But, we don't have a relationship. So who am I to say anything to him? So, for them, my service might be to keep my mouth shut instead of trying to set a good example. And for somebody else, I might be able to take them aside and say, well, I was wondering about what you said here and what you did there. I wasn't sure that was right. And, we can sit down and talk about it, because we have a good relationship. And to emphasize this point that without engaging in Krishna Bhakti, there's no, or at least Vishnu Bhakti, there's no chance of liberation. Well, one example that's given is that any so-called any hope for advancement or any prospect for real progress without bhakti is like the nipples that you see on the neck of some goats. They have these things. Some goats have these things that hang down, and they look like the nipples that come from an udder, and they're not. I mean, you can use your best technique, your best milking technique. You're not going to get any juice at all. There's no milk there. So whatever we do, and whatever list you want to make of auspicious activities, if they're not used in service of the Lord and His devotees, then ultimately they're utterly useless. So to emphasize that, he Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur cites some verses in his commentary. So one is from later in the 11th canto. This is Uddhava speaking. He says, Tapatrayena vihitasya ghore santapyamanasya bhavadhanisha pashyami nanyat charanam tavangri dvandvat patra amrita vivarshat. My dear Lord, one who's been cruelly burned by the blazing fire of material miseries, having fallen into the network of material existence. For such a person, I see no other possible shelter besides your two lotus feet, which are a shower of nectar extinguishing the fire of suffering. And he gives a very clear description of what that fire is. He says, Tapatraya. Does that sound familiar?
Tapas.
Tapatraya.
No. Sorry. Tapatraya.
3 austerities.
Pardon?
3 austerities.
It's a nice guess. Thank you for playing. It makes sense. Sounds right.
Yeah, it does actually.
What did Sanatana Goswami ask? Who am I? Kayami? And why am I suffering from these threefold miseries? Tapatraya. How do we become free? Tapatrayun mulanam. What's the root of the threefold miseries? It's false ego. So this is this blazing fire of existence that consumes our lives. It consists of these 3 miseries: adhyatmika klesha, adhibhautika klesha, and adhidaivika klesha. Adhyatmika, those things caused by our body and those sufferings caused by our body and our mind. Those sufferings caused by other living entities, and those caused by higher beings or the environment. These are the when we're buffeted back at, I mean, it's like three bullies picking on us, right? And they push us back and forth. Come on, sissy, come on, fight back, What are we going to do? We're the skinny little kid, And they've come along and kicked sand in our face. They're all these big Charles Atlas guys, and they've come, the big bullies like from the old comic books in the 40s and 50s. And they're kicking sand in our face and they're pushing us back and forth among the three of them, Come on, what are we going to do? Oh, I'm going to tell my big brother or something like that. But the thing is, of course, if we're holding on to our Father's hand, Dad's right there, and Dad is actually Charles Atlas, then we don't have as much of a problem. So how do we do that? He says the only way to do it is by taking shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, which he says are a shower of nectar that extinguishes that fire of material existence. And then he cites another verse from the 12th canto. Samsara sintum atidustaram utitirshor nanya plavo bhagavata purushottamasya lilakata rasa nishevana mantarena pumso bhaved vivita dukkha davarditasya. For a person who's suffering in the fire of countless miseries and who desires to cross the insurmountable ocean of material existence, there's no suitable boat except that of cultivating devotion to the transcendental taste for the narrations of the Supreme Lord, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's pastimes. This is the boat for crossing the ocean of material suffering, taking shelter of Harikatha. I heard a story about that, but I'm not sure of the source, so I'm a little reluctant to share it, but it's kind of cool. I can tell it privately or something. And then he cites a verse from the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam. He says, Kingva yogena sankhena nyasa svadhyaya yorapi kingva shreyo bhiranyaischa nayatratma pradohari. Transcendental practices that do not ultimately help one realize the Supreme Personality of God are useless, be they mystic yoga practice, analytical study of matter. So yoga, sankhya, severe austerity, nyasa, the acceptance of, what's the severe austerity? I missed the word. Yoga, sankhya, austerity, nyasa, taking sannyas, svadhyaya, regular study of the scriptures, serious study of the scriptures. This is recommended in the Yoga Sutras. This is recommended in Bhagavad Gita. He says they all may be important aspects for spiritual advancement, but unless one understands the personality of Godhead, they're all useless. Like trying to milk the nipples on the neck of a goat.
But wouldn't you come to understand the personality of Godhead by studying the scriptures?
Right scriptures under the right direction.
Yeah, because I guess there's lots of scholars that study the scriptures that have no devotion.
Yeah. Srila Sridhar Maharaj calls it a jungle of sound. Calls the Vedic literature a jungle of sound. I mean, you go into the forest and you can get in there, unless you know the forest, you can get completely lost. Hansel and Gretel needed the, whatever it was, breadcrumbs or whatever. And of course the animals ate them behind them, so they were stuck in the dark forest. But that's our situation, if we try to, I mean, we don't know where to start. We don't know which direction to go. We don't know how to understand it. I mean, Vedanta Sutra, it's spoken in code. You speak in code when it's for someone special, right? When you're speaking in code, you say something and members of the in crowd know what you're saying, and other people are going, what? You know, it sounds like it might even have some other meaning, might even appear to have some other meaning, you know. But people in the in crowd, they understand. They're clued in. They have the key. They have the enigma, or they have the machine that tells you how the enigma machine works, right? They use
The decoder.
Get the decoder ring, right? They sent in, they got the decoder, they sent in the box tops or the reasonable facsimiles. Remember that? Reasonable, or a reasonable facsimile thereof, or something like that. They used to send in 3 tops from Kellogg's Sugar Corn Pops, or reasonable facsimiles. Reasonable facsimile probably meant you had to draw one.
Oh,
Which means at least you at least need to have had 1 box top so that you could copy it. Of course, nowadays we just take a picture with our iPhone and email it.
And the Prakashanandas too. They come to mind. They were profound scholars. And they
Absolutely. And they had no clue.
The Prakashananda guys.
and
The
Sarvabhauma
Mayavadi
Bhattacharya.
sannyasis of Benares. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya,
Yeah.
you know, the greatest scholar of his day, who trained sannyasis in Vedanta. He was clueless. He was babbling on for 10
7
days.
days.
How many days?
7 days.
7
and
days?
7 nights.
And nights, and then he says, I don't know if you get this. Usually, you give some cues, right? We have these cues that we give, or what are that feedback, active listening feedback or something like that. And Mahaprabhu's just kind of sitting there. And so with straight face, and he says, I'm not sure do you understand anything that I'm talking? I don't know if you're getting Vedanta at all. He says, oh, Vedanta, I understand Vedanta perfectly well, but can't make a bit of sense out of anything you said for the last week, And then you schooled him, literally. So we can engage in study, we can engage in yoga, those things, and they might be helpful. Yoga might be helpful for gaining realization of the super soul. Studying the scriptures might be helpful for some kind of advancement. But unless we have the right guidance, we can become completely lost in that. So then he ends up by saying, and this should sound familiar, right? This is like several places in Bhagavad Gita. He says the same thing to Arjuna. Because you are my devotee, you're my friend, I'm going to tell you that. And then at the end he says, okay, now because you're my, he tells him all these things, and then he says, all right, so this is how it is. Now you mull it over and you decide how to act. It's up to you. I can't make you do anything. He says, but because you're my friend and my devotee, I'm going to tell you the most secret of all secrets. And of course, as Guru Maharaj likes to say, everybody begins the Bhagavad Gita at the edges of their seats, right? Because you've got this whole big melodrama that's built up, and you're going to have as he was saying to the folks in Charlotte the other day, we're on the verge of a nuclear war, and and the audience is at the edge of their seats, and then Bhagavad Gita. and so then he goes through all 600 and some odd verses of Bhagavad Gita, and he says, okay, so that's how it is. You figure it out. But let me tell you something really special. Just between you and me. This is our secret. Because you're my devotee. You're my friend. I love you. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Just love me. And you'll certainly come to me. And I promise you this. Look, I know I come from Mathura. People from Mathura don't have a very good reputation. And I know that I haven't had a very good reputation myself about straight talk. Just ask any gopi. Ask any Brajbasi. But look, you're my friend. You're my dear devotee. We're bosom friends. You've got to believe me. This is really true. You really can. Just have me. You've got to believe me just by loving me. This is the biggest secret there is. So therefore, Sarva Dharman Parityaja. Yeah. How do you do it? Forget everything else. Just me. It's all about me. Really. Just really all about me. Because Bhaktaram Jagya Tapasam Sarva Lokamaheshwaram, just as said at the end of the 5th chapter. Everything's mine. I run everything. I'm also everybody's dearest friend. I live in your. I'm right there in your heart. All you got to do is just say, "Oh, I love you." Well, not just say it, but you have to do it too. So this is the big secret. And here now we're being, because Uddhava is also his friend, his servant, and his well-wisher, because his service is as Krishna's counselor, Krishna's advisor, his consigliere. Right? So he says, now I'm going to give you the most confidential knowledge. Just listen up. Pay attention. So we'll find out what that is when next week.
Within a couple of months.
Yeah, so we'll remember.
Next week.
We'll be able to remember. Well, we'll see how the schedule. We'll see how the schedule goes. See what service I'm told to do for the devotees. Not that wouldn't be that shocking. Anybody have anything else to add? Anybody out there in interwebs land? Is it Vrindavan? Hi, Vrindavan
I
and
can't see
Jagannath.
who.
Or maybe it's Jess, Harble, Jess, whoever it is. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you for dragging me away from the other keyboard.